welcome to La Hora del Mitote. I'm Leigh Henderson. I'm the managing director of TheatreWorks. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm really happy to be here with some of my amazing, brilliant colleagues from some of the other theater companies around the Bay Area. We were here together back in January, I think, and we had a fantastic conversation about the state of the theater, and we went 15 minutes over the time we meant to go, and it felt like there was still a lot of things people had to say. So I'm really happy to be back here with all of you again today. So welcome back. And for people out there watching, we love for this to be an interactive conversation. So if you have questions or if you have comments or if you just want to give us a wave and say hi and let us know you're watching, you can do that in the comments on Facebook or YouTube, and we'd love to hear from you. So I'm going to go around and just ask my guests to all introduce yourselves and let us know a little bit about the theater company you're with. And also, if you have a personal arts practice and you want to tell us about that too, that would be great. And then we can jump in and start chatting. So let me start with Lisa, just because she's right next to me.
Okay, hi. Thanks, Leigh. My name's Lisa Mallette. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm the Executive Artistic Director for City Lights Theater Company of San Jose. I have been there for, I can't believe, almost 20 years. Can you believe that? I cannot believe it. So it's not until this summer, but it's a 20-year anniversary, and I'm just shocked. And one of the reasons why I've stayed so long is because I don't feel like she has found her full potential. City Lights is not quite done getting to where she wants to be. So that's why it's stayed interesting and scary, and that's why I've stayed. And I love that question that you just said, Leigh, about my practice. I've been thinking a lot about that lately because I started out just full on acting years and years of just acting. And then I kind of got into directing. And then the next thing I knew, I was directing a company, and I sort of fell into that. And it's very hard for me to describe what my practice is because I feel like it's storytelling. Because now my primary focus is lifting up others, creating a space for them to be good storytellers, and trying to support that the best way that I can. I still direct, and I still would love to act when there's time, but it's hard for me to say. Like, I consider myself a creative and a storyteller, you know.
I love that. Thank you. And just a note for anyone out there watching, I'm scrolling the websites of all these theater companies along the bottom. And if you are not already familiar with any of these companies, I would really, really encourage you to jot these down and go visit their websites or find them on social media, because as I think you're probably going to hear over the course of the next hour, all of these companies are doing just really amazing and different and unique work. And so I would really encourage all of you out there to go and learn more about them if you're not familiar already. And with that, Jeffrey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Jeffrey Lowe. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I work at TheatreWorks Silicon Valley. I am the director of community partnerships and the casting director at TheatreWorks. And in the interim, I guess I'm the education department of sorts for now. And so I'm working on all of that stuff. I also work, especially during the pandemic, and when we're hoping to keep on going lightly post-pandemic, fingers crossed whenever that happens, with a group called Our Digital Stories, which is creating digital work and partnering with different nonprofits to try to sort of signal boost and uplift work, which seems to be a big topic of what we're going to be talking about today, which is really wonderful. And in terms of my private practice, primarily artistically, I work as a playwright and a director around the Bay Area. And I do work in education and consulting, I guess, or just speaking on work with equity, diversity, and inclusion. And although during this time when I am working as the education department, I have sort of stepped away a little, temporarily stepped away from some of my duties with the accountability work group. I'm one of the organizers of a Bay Area accountability work group that has been working with various managing directors and artistic directors and executive directors on the Bay Area on themes of equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. So that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Including with many of the managing and artistic directors on this screen right now, I think. So yeah, thank you. Gary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Gary Ferguson, and I'm the Associate Artistic Director at Los Altos Stage Company and the Education Director at Los Altos Youth Theater. I actually am in a very interesting spot because I started right when the pandemic started. So it was kind of a new world for me to jump in and kind of no parachute, nothing, inform me. So it was so exciting to be invited to be able to come here and talk about how I've been leveraging the relationships to kind of make it go. Before that, I was kind of a New York, that New York performer that actually got to come back home recently. So it's been nice. I actually have been working in primarily dance, of course, for the last 10 years. It's been dance, choreography, things like that. But my private practice has actually been moving past that, just kind of utilizing anything that's kind of physical. So I've been doing a lot of intimacy choreography. I've been doing a lot of fight choreography, actually doing it well. And explaining to people why the physicality of shows actually kind of matter, right? That we just don't do choreography anymore. All of it is choreography, right? So I've been working a lot within that. And of course, big proponent of equity, diversity, inclusion. I've been really pushing that, that it should be part of your mantra in your executive team and that it shouldn't be an outside source. So if you're people want to go to my website, it's GaryFergusonSite.com. And I talk a lot more about how actually bringing and onboarding people with the skills that you're looking for rather than creating an equity and diversity and inclusion specialist. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Max, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Bora Max Koknar, and I am the recently title change Chief Visionary Officer of the Dragon, as we've been sort of shifting some structural things around in how we do the company and the business structures in theater making. And oh gosh, personal practice. I haven't had one of those in a little while, but I kind of similarly to Lisa, especially, I think, come from a background of being an actor and then from there directing and things like that. And I actually have a lot of background in movement theater, mime, things like that. So Gary, I want to learn more about your practice. And I'm really interested in storytelling as context. And the skill sets that we can provide as artists in real world contexts. And that's a lot of the work that I've been doing, not necessarily artistically, but personally, that connects to my artistic practices, connecting what we do in the artistic world with the business world, the education world, whatever we can do to support the community, which I think we'll talk more about later too.
Yeah, and I want to hear more about how you're restructuring your company sometime soon, too. And finally, Karen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Altree Piemme. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the director of the Red Ladder Theater Company. And for people who don't know, Red Ladder is a social justice theater company, and we work with a wide range of participants within our community to be able to uplift their stories, to be able to amplify their voices. So we spend a lot of time on the road. We work in a lot of carceral settings, in shelters, with homeless and runaway youth and pregnant and parenting teens and youth in the foster system and men and women in the prison system and neuroatypical participants and seniors in our Japantown community. And we use the tools and techniques of theater to help them connect with their own creativity, tell their own stories, and build positive life skills. And in terms of my artistic practice, I am, much like Lisa, started as an actor, converted to director, started running a company. So director, actor, dramaturg, workshop facilitator, acting instructor, with a focus on new works development, social justice theater, and community access to the arts.
You all are just so cool. Like, I feel so fortunate to be here talking to all of you, and I feel really fortunate to, be in a theater community with all of you. And I just want to, we have a wave from Diane Vega, who's our production manager out there watching on Facebook. Hi, Diane.
Hey, Diane.
And yeah, anyone else out there watching, we love to hear from you. So just drop it in the chat. On
What was that technology? That was cool.
It's built into my little StreamYard here. It's fun.
My
StreamYard is neat.
I can tell you about it. It's really easy. Yeah, but so speaking of community and being happy to be here in community with all of you, I wanted to start by talking about community and collaboration. And I think probably most of us knew this already, but if we didn't know it already in this past year, we have clearly learned that we are not in competition with one another as different theater companies, that we are all part of a network of artists and audiences and organizations, and that we rely on each other, right? None of us can survive individually unless we all are surviving and thriving. And so my question for you is, how do we do that? How do we help each other? Either, what are we doing? What would you like to be doing? What ideas do you have about how all of us as different theater organizations can make sure that all of us succeed? And just jump in, anyone.
Starting with the small stuff.
Well, I'll start since I'm the newest one here. I have depended so much on the local communities, right? I started when the pandemic started, so I kind of didn't have a resource system. It was just kind of like, okay, we're now through the cybersphere. Normally, I would assume the kids would come to our programs, right? Because it was in live and they knew where it was, but I didn't have any of that. And I also didn't know kind of how to reach them in cyberspace, right? So it has been so important to me when it came to costuming, because unfortunately we didn't have, the budget to be able to add costumers in. So when I started my online performances with the youth program, we started with Moana and Drowsy. It was purely reaching out to your theater companies to loan me costumes. Like that was like what I could do, and I could come in and I would grab the costumes, and you got, all the costumers would make it so easy for me, and I could bag them up and put them in little baggies. And then I actually dropped them off at all the little houses of the kids who were in the shows. And that was like my first time to actually meet them face to face. But I simply would not have been able to do the productions if I had another costume budget on top of that. The same thing came with borrowing props, for the adult program, I helped do the set design for Anne. So TheatreWorks, thank you, Jeffrey, was so monumental, right? As everyone is, of getting the props that we needed, because it was such a specific period piece. Also, I've looked recently and met with a lot of my my counterparts in the education programs to make sure that we're all diversifying our shows, that we're not crossing shows. Because as of right now, we're literally all offering the same thing, right? We're all on, virtual programs. We're not on stages. We're not at different budgets. So that has been very, very exciting. But because I was really, really looking to push the program to full equity, I created a show this summer. Not created, but I created a program where we're actually using inviting differently abled kids into our program, because I believe in full equity. So we're looking to provide an outlet for kids in wheelchairs and walkers, and it's called Bring Your Own Wheels, right? And I've been reaching out to theater companies to also help me with that. How do I make my shows more handicap accessible? How am I able to reach out? If you've worked with this population before, what have you done? How have you gotten around these things? So for me, relationships recently have just been everything. It's exactly how I've been existing.
I love that. And Gary, we've actually got a question for you from Facebook. Where is your company?
Hi. I am Los Altos Stage Company, which is our adult program. And then I also oversee LAYT, which is Los Altos Youth Theater, which is our kids program. And I'm just going to plug it now. We just finished casting for Les Mis. So we have that. We're doing Starlight Express, which takes differently abled kids and fully abled kids, right? Come on. Who else is going to do Starlight Express? I had to give it a heart. Right. I had to make some way of it. And we have this amazing performer, a young kid who's in a wheelchair. And I thought, do you want to be a train? He says, I want to be a train. So now we're doing Starlight Express. So that's my company.
Nice.
I'd love to tag on.
in the interest of making sure you have all the resources, we should get you looped into TELBay, which is the theater education leaders of the Bay Area. So I'll hook you up because we meet twice a month and resource share.
I will take any hookup you got. Thank you so much.
Yay, we're helping each other right now.
I just want to jump in and say I just loved the prompt from yesterday about how do you define community? Like, how does your organization define it? And of course, anytime there's a question out there about the organization that I lead, I'm always looking to myself as well. Like, how do I define community? And I just love that question because, at first blush, I'm like, well, it's our patrons and our stakeholders and our supporters and the people that live in our geographical area. But the truth is my community is yes, and all of the artists that live in the Bay Area. I mean, those are my people, so my colleagues and all of the independent artists that work for all of our companies and bop around, and people, all of you that run other organizations, you're my community. You are a City Lights community. And so that kind of made it very crystal clear to me that if we are to serve our communities, we need to not only be serving our patrons and our donors and our stakeholders, but we should be serving our local artists and each other. And that just really hit home for me. And I think I've always believed it, but didn't really know exactly how to articulate that. And it manifests itself in so many ways. Yes, of course, relationships and sharing and being open and transparent and generous with our time and our things, of course. But also like even things like advocacy. If the pandemic taught me anything about advocacy, it's that the question is not why is City Lights important to the community? It's why is live theater important to the community? Why are interactive, engaging, transformational live participation, like a lot of what Karen does, why is that so critical for a vital and healthy community? So I feel like that's the question that I'm going to be posing forever. Not why should City Lights be in SOFA? I mean, or why is City Lights important? It's really all of us. And I do feel like that we have that in our spirit. But I think we need to be more intentional about lifting each other up and more intentional about putting down, there's no secrets. Like, we're public benefit corporations. We belong to the people. We do not own these businesses. So if we can't be fully transparent and vulnerable with each other, then, we're in trouble. So anything that we can be doing to encourage more of that, I'm really down with. And the last final thing I just want to say is that I'll let Karen talk about this great idea about shared sort of expensive back office ideas, which I love. She's got some great ideas about that. So I'm not going to steal that thunder. But I also think that we have a responsibility as arts leaders in the Bay Area right now to try to work together, which I think we're on the path, but to find some common language around caring for, respecting, and really lifting up our local artists that is consistent, so that if they do bop from Dragon to TheatreWorks and work for Karen for a while and then come to do a show at City Lights, there's a consistency of care, support, and respect that they can count on in the Bay Area. So that's going to take a lot, right? But I feel like it's important, and I feel like it would make a difference. But I sort of teed you up there, Karen, because you've got you have so many great ideas about how we can also, the little guys, the smaller organizations under 2 million, for example, share some resources that we've never been able to afford.
Yeah, I mean, just to directly piggyback on what you're talking about, Lisa, I think, and Leigh, you ask, how can we help one another? And what we can actually do is help the artists in the community and center the artists in the community, right? Because no single theater company exists in isolation, right? If City Lights were the only theater company that existed, it would go out of business, right? Because there is not enough work at any one theater company for all of the artists who are in the Bay Area to work. And so I guarantee that there are artists who have worked at every single one of our theater companies. I personally have worked, I think, at every single theater company in this space in one way or another, right? And that's true of all of our artists. And so we have to remember that it's an ecosystem that exists. And if we are not sufficiently supporting the artists in our community by lifting one another up and supporting all of the different organizations, then there isn't going to be enough work or enough opportunity for all of the actors and designers and stage managers and everyone who is there, and the well will dry up and they will not have the work that they need to do. And I think that there are ways that we can share resources that don't take away from what we're able to do, but actually allow us to do things better that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. And I think that's what Lisa is alluding to. I think a lot has come to light in our industry, in our region, through either the Living Document or the We See White American Theater demands. And I think we really need to be paying attention to exactly what all of our artists need to be able to do their best work. And often in smaller companies, there is not an opportunity to be able to provide those resources comprehensively, whether that means having some kind of human resource department or grievance channel that people can go to, or some system by which they are able to work that they know is going to be consistent across organizations. Or, something that I would like to be able to provide is, some mental health resources for artists, particularly those that are really doing a lot of emotional labor to do the work that gets done in theater. And, might there be some resources that we can share, or organizations that others know that they trust, that we can say, okay, well, if our artists need these resources, then we'll be able to support them in getting what they need to be able to do the work that we're asking them to do.
That is such a good idea, Karen.
Well, I was just going to jump in and say a little bit, like, I think another big thing in terms of, how we could support each other is sort of like the dual advocacy that goes in multiple ways. I think, as Karen was alluding to, in a lot of the self-reflection that artists and theater companies have been doing, especially during this time, but probably even before this time, the thought of, us being in competition with each other, or this idea of scarcity among resources or audience or artists or any of that stuff. I mean, it really just becomes a tool to suppress emerging voices and diverse voices, that and it makes it so, you think about like arts funding and grant funding, where then it all gets, because of the thought of scarcity, it all gets hogged up by the same, three companies, while an African American theater company gets enough of grant money just to keep the lights on. You know what I mean? Like that weird, that terrible example of like, oh, this like multi-million-dollar theater company got funding to do audience development for a community, but the theater that works in that community is getting half of their monthly electric bill. You know what I mean? And I think that if we all could work together in terms of advocacy. I mean, think about, I was reading an article in American Theater Magazine. I think it was written by, or it was an interview with Nataki Garrett at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, who was talking about, the need for, maybe it's time to bring back the Federal Theater Project. And she was talking about how the arts advocacy is all of the advocacy that was organized together by multiple disciplines, by multiple sized organizations, really helped push through I don't know the new name, but it was like Save Our Stages, Shuttered
Venue Operators Grant.
Yeah, it got more complicated, that title, but it got it got funding that has become available. I mean, it's not enough funding, but it's something, right? It's going to help a lot of organizations make it, hopefully, through the end of this. And I think that, the more, it's not just organizations of the same size or the same disciplines organizing with each other, when it's really a group of us organizing together, then we can make real change happen and make things a little bit more equitable. And we could really reshuffle the cards, because the way things have been going was perhaps appropriate a long time ago, but we really need to find a way to do a harsh reset without ruining everyone's lives financially. But we need to find a way to be able to do a reset. And I think that us supporting one another, and us, all the audience members out here, just keep going to your theaters. They're going to be doing some things that might be a little different. They might be bringing on different artists, doing different types of plays, doing different type of programming. And a lot of these organizations, especially the organizations you might attend that are predominantly white institutions, they're going to be finding themselves. They're going to be figuring out what their new voice is, hopefully, if they're doing the right work. And please, please, please just be on the ride with them for at least for a little bit, because if everyone just jumps ship right away, then it's going to be really hard conversations with board members and donors and other people, and it's going to make it hard to do change. So a lot of organizations, mine, TheatreWorks included, are trying to make some really big changes. And I just think that we all need to work together, and all of our audiences need to just be supportive and stay on the ride as we find ourselves again.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone's saying so hard. It's so much about, like you were saying, Jeffrey, I think there was a system that made sense, maybe turn of the century as we were going into the 20th century, that doesn't anymore. And all of our relationships are transactional, and I think they need to be more relational and around lifting up the whole ecosystem, because the pie has been small and we have been fighting over our little chunks of it. And the people who suffer are the independent artists who we all rely on, who are our community. And it's nice to see the narrative changing of, like, instead of forcing these institutions to remain no matter what, because the artistic institutions should remain, like, how do we serve? What is the purpose of these institutions as we go into the next era of arts making? Yeah.
And I think it's super important to be nimble enough to be responsive to our community, right? That I find it fascinating that in the before times, let's say, lots of organizations, particularly larger organizations, they may have an education component, but that is not central to the core of their mission, right? That oftentimes that's we'll do this because it gets us grants, or we'll do this because of, X, Y, or Z, and have really given short shrift to the ways in which, in a tangible, hands-on, day-to-day way, the organization can deeply impact members of the community. And there are some theater companies that have discovered during this pandemic that the only work they are doing right now is education and community-based. That there are still people in the community who are reaching out and saying that they need the theater company to be able to give them an opportunity to connect creatively and stay artistically nimble and be able to exercise, the other side of their brain. And suddenly these these theater companies, some of whom were, cutting and cutting and cutting their education programs in favor of, splashier and flashier aspects of the organization, are suddenly discovering that the only reason they're still here is because they have programs that are able to be responsive to the community.
And if I could, I wanted to piggyback on kind of what everyone's saying, but Jeffrey kind of started that dialogue with that hard reset, because my background wasn't really local theater, right? Of course, I grew up in it and had been a part of it, but I wasn't in the mindset of the olden days, right? So I always thought, why aren't all of our theater companies like the theaters in New York? You've got the Schubert, I've got the Imperial. When I go to New York, I see 4 or 5 shows. So this idea that that's my customer or that's my patron, I think that was limiting us. These people, if I drive an hour and 30 minutes to go to work, I can drive 2 hours in a weekend to see 3 shows at 3 different theaters. Why? Because I did it in New York, right? And I think that maybe this hard reset has let us realize that, yay, I want to go see this show here because I'm doing it. I want to go see that show there because they're doing it. And more if we're in our own theater, we're in our own house, but our patrons can move around. And I love the idea where we've started to really, in our own platforms, talk about the other theaters, what they're doing. That's amazing. I love that show. And I like to speak on that. I was like, go see that theater for that show. Right. And I'm hoping that new reset really lets us know that there truly is enough money to go around. If I want to see 14 Broadway shows, I'm going into the Hawk to see 14 Broadway shows. I can go in Hawk to see the 14 local shows. So I'm hoping that's part of the hard reset.
And I think there's an opportunity to celebrate our differences and really communicate them to our audiences who may not be into musical theater, but may be into immersive stuff, or may want a, hard-hitting drama or something more community-based, and knowing where you can go for the kind of thing that fulfills you, but still ultimately connects you to a community and lets you experience what it is to be human among other humans is the thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important to lift each other up. I really do. I mean, I just think we all have, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, e-blasts, whatever, right? And we've been shuttered for a year, and we have similar audiences, definitely similar artists, but perhaps the people that are tuning into those things or have or are following us might not be following everybody else. So, I mean, why not? It's part of our practice at City Lights. It's part of the culture to shine a light on others. We don't think it's well, I've never thought it was threatening, ever. If an arts lover is an arts lover, and if they love something at TheatreWorks, they're more likely to seek out something at Teatro Vision. I mean, that is the way that I've always thought about it. And I've even had a couple people say, "You're really pushing that thing at Palo Alto Players," and I'm like, "Well." So, and so I actually, my marketing director looks for those opportunities. We're like, right. We just did a highlight on Los Altos Stage, Gary, and we're about to do one with the Yep, there we go. So that's part of that was part of our next stage program, which is Thursday nights at 8, and it's super fun. We do interviews and showcase musicians, sometimes talk about design. Like, it's just really, it's been a fun thing. And it was sort of like, how do you program in a pandemic? And that's what came out of that and a podcast channel. We're right now on the 25th. I think we're doing something with the San Jose Museum of Art, and and I'm also, there are early discussions to highlight and showcase some work at San Jose Jazz, and I just think we should be trying to do these kinds of things And it's not for each other. It's for, it's for all of us, it's for the ecosystem, like we're saying. I have tons of things that I want to change. Like I want to do a co-pro. Like I haven't really done that. And I really want to do that. Like, I don't know exactly what that means, but if I can work with another organization and share resources and we can put it on together, we have an expression at City Lights, which is that we try to stick to as much as possible, which is lead with your heart, not with your ego. And I truly believe that our own individual egos are the thing that holds us back most of the time, holds us back from who cares? Let's share it. Let's share the power. Let's share the glory. Let's share the ticket sales. So I just want to lean into that so that we can come back better than before when this is over. But thank you for highlighting my little next stage program. But it's really fun. And I'm looking for, any of you that want to do like a highlight interview thing, let us know, because I think that it makes us all stronger when we show that we respect and care and love each other, honestly.
I'll also jump on that. And sorry, Max, I keep doing this to you. It's also, another way we could support each other is support each other through resource sharing and art and introducing of artists. I think that a lot of times, someone might hesitate to program a show because they don't know if they're going to get the right artist to be able to execute it the way they want it to be done, or they don't know if they have the right director or they have the right performer, or if they have the musicians to do anything. And I think that the more we could be mindful of introducing new faces and faces people might not necessarily know is going to help us. I think that we all, one of the things we've been talking about, Karen mentioned the We See White American Theater document, and at TheatreWorks, the artistic staff has been spending about 3 hours a week going bullet point by bullet point to talk about these things. And one of the things that's been really eye-opening, and one thing that we are very guilty of, is hiring people because you have a shorthand. We have limited resources, so we have to put together a show on essentially what feels like a summer stock schedule. So that designer knows their stock, we could do that really fast. That actor knows how this director works, we can do that real fast. And that just perpetuates hiring the same people. It pushes against diversity in a number of ways. It pushes against taking care of different artists and all of these different things. And the more we can help each other with introducing people and including and welcoming multiple voices, the better this is going to be. Just before the pandemic, I remember I was having a very tough, I have so many stories of this. Like, I was having such a tough time casting Ragtime for TheatreWorks. And then I just remember looking through what was going on. I'm like, oh, look, Ray of Light's doing, I hope this is Ray of Light. I'm sorry if it's not Ray of Light. Ray of Light's doing Carolina Change. I should go see that. And two of those cast members were, I'm like, oh, I should audition you. That's exactly what fills some roles. I emailed their casting director who used to work at TheatreWorks, like, hey, can I get those email addresses? And then boom, they were cast. I was trying to cast some characters in Between Riverside and Crazy at San Jose Stage. And I'm like, oh, they're doing Quixote Nuevo at Cal Shakes. Let me go over there. And I emailed their casting director. I'm like, I need this entire cast list's email addresses. I need the contact sheet for this show. And the more we can do this, and I didn't know so many of these people, or if I knew them, I didn't have their email addresses. And so we need to do, the days of us just putting out a casting call and hoping that people show up is gone. And I think this goes for hiring positions as well. We need to do the heavy lifting and the extra work, that if the right people don't show up, we can't just hire someone just because we got to do it. We actually have to keep going until we get the right people there. And I think we could all support each other with that, because we know people that others don't.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too that years ago, I often felt that within Bay Area casting, that there were a lot of casting directors that just held their held their databases of artists close to their chest and did not want to share them with other people because they felt like, oh, well, I know this person and I know that they're amazing. And if other people find out that they're amazing too, then maybe they won't work for us as much, which if all that's going to happen is you're going to drive those artists out of the area because there's not going to be enough work for them. So, I think the more that we can sort of share those resources and then also just sort of look for opportunities to say, how can I help? Like, I see that you're doing this. How can I help? Or I see that you want to accomplish this. How can I help? And Lisa, to your point about co-pros, we actually have a co-pro in the works that is later to be revealed, but it came about because there was an artist in the way further North Bay that was saying, hey, I want to be able to do this project. And I called them up and said, how can I help? And, one of the things that we can look at, especially if we are not these enormous theater companies, but if we're smaller companies that maybe have a more local audience ship, that maybe you're not going to get people who are going to go from the way far East Bay down to the South Bay. And Gary, yes, maybe you will have people who drive all over, because I certainly will, to see a show that I really want to see. But there are also very local audiences as well. And so, what can we do to say, gosh, let's collaborate as theater companies throughout the region and put on something that can play in Oakland and San Jose and San Rafael and Redwood City, because especially if they're the kinds of shows that maybe take place in smaller venues, they're more intimate kinds of things, then we're not going to be in a venue that is going to bring us a big enough audience to reach as many people as maybe we want to. So can that same show be done in 3 or 4 different venues throughout the Bay to bring in a broader audience? Because, if everyone's investing that much work into putting the show up on its feet, why not have the opportunity for more people to see it?
Yes, and let's not forget that I don't know about all of you, but I would assume we're going to be going through a long recovery period because of being shut down for so long. So we're going to have to be super smart about our resources and still serving the community, and so even if it's a co-pro in the same zip code, I still feel like that would be supporting each other, because let's face it, it's going to be rough for a while. It really is. And we're not even really sure how many people are going to feel comfortable coming back the first year. And I think that we'd have to be smart about that too, and be happily surprised if we have full houses, but expect that not to happen for a while. So really, this starts me off on a whole nother thing about how I don't think that it should be so transactional. Like, I don't think the art we create needs to make money. Like, I think the fact that we're creating the art should be supported, but that's a whole nother topic, maybe for another panel. But I'm super down with this sort of share, really share. And the budget's broken now, which is kind of cool. We always did 6 shows a year and expected X number of dollars from individual ticket sales, and then X number of dollars that always went up a little bit from subscriptions or season passes, and then this much from this and this. Well, everything's off the table now, everything. So if I plan for a show not to make as much single ticket money, I actually know that isn't going to kill us, because we haven't had a show for a year. And nobody, at least in my world, we don't have a lot of people paying for our digital content, nor do I really expect them to, frankly. I really don't. And it's also not how a lot of people want to take in their art, because it's not gathering people in community, which is really what we do. So I have so much compassion for don't buy a ticket to that. If you don't want to sit in front of your computer, don't do it. But things like this, these conversations and interviews, those I'm kind of I've been sort of into those. But I think when we come back, we can make up new rules. We can start fresh, reset everything though, reset the expectations of the budget and where's the money coming from and how much does something cost. So there's a musical that I want to do that will be expensive. And so my first thought is, well, first of all, can you do a musical? Like, is that going to be super dangerous? Like, how far out should I plan that just because of the singing? And then I think, well, in the recovery period, I can't really afford it. Well, if I partner with Teatro, we can probably afford it, you know? And so it's that kind of like really opening up our minds to how we can truly support each other and be stronger on the other side. It's also a fantastic message. Like I think the people that live in the community need to see that we care about each other and that we want to work together and that we're not siloed. And those stereotypical artist, you know, all of those silly things that you might find in an improv are actually not true. You know, that we're not all filled with ego and directors aren't all mean to actors and all theaters aren't covetous of their zip code. Like it's not really like that. And I think that that's the message we have to be pushing out there to everyone so that they can really see, wait, it isn't, you know, it's not like that. Anyway, I just felt like I jumped on a soapbox.
Speaking of people consuming digital content, I just want to say hi to the people who are saying hi to us out there. So Stephanie, artists, hi. And then Angelo says, hello, beautiful gente. So hi, Angelo. Thank you for watching. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Karen.
I was just going to say, I think it's something that we can do, you know, even from a staffing perspective as well, right? That I know, for example, in San Francisco, Crowded Fire and Golden Thread had, you know, very intentionally said, you know, we each have like half a position that we need someone for that has basically the same skill set. So can we create a full-time job for someone where they do half of it for one organization and half of it for the other? And they very intentionally went about, you know, creating that position. And I think, you know, even though we are all theater artists and theater companies, we function a little bit differently. Our missions are a little bit different, et cetera. So, you know, we could very easily hire the same marketing manager or development manager or what have you to raise funds, market what we're doing, promote what's going on with us. Certainly look at teaching artists who are all over the Bay Area, you know, that we could have resident teaching artists that where as companies we can work together to say, hey, you know, I've got this person who's great and they're doing these classes for me in the mornings. They're available in the afternoons. How can we stitch something together so that they are working much more full time and be able to find ways that we can support as many individuals who are doing their best to make a living in this industry and feel like they've always been in a position where companies have been in competition for their work and it has hurt the individual, right? That they have to commit to this company or another company, and the companies just need to get together and say, how can we work together to make it possible for these individuals to have as much work as they need for them to be sustainable, because that's part of what will make our ecosystem sustainable.
I think that is so funny. So I was trying to figure out what co-pro meant. So thank you for giving me a moment. I finally figured it out. I was like, I don't know what that means, right? I had said before the pandemic, I had mentioned to many friends and other Bay Area people, why don't we have a LORT, League of Resident Theaters? Now I get it. I get what you guys are saying. For us, it was LORT. It was so exciting, you know, when I came back home in the dark ages before I left again. I did a little show called The Hot Mikado. I'm not sure if you guys remember that, but we came through. It started in Atlanta, Theater Under the Stars. It went to the Fords in DC. Then we came here to San Jose, and we were working at AMT of San Jose. And then we went to Sacramento Music Theater. So I, as an equity person, got all my weeks knocked out real quick with one show, and I was able to do that. And I kept saying, why can't we do that in the Bay Area? And I think, to that point, sharing that type of show, right? Because no one would have been able to do that show. If you saw that set, it was literally $1 million set. moving around. It was an amazing show. I loved it. And we traveled with the director. I mean, it gave us a lot of work. But also piggybacking off of that, we were also when Jeffrey meant the idea of giving sharing the whole idea of our people, right? The performers. I think we're answering those questions, like when we all ended up doing Mamma Mia, right? That was the whole thing. Every performer, I think, in the Bay Area was screaming, is there no one not doing Mamma Mia this year? I don't know if that would have happened if we would have been more in touch with each other. I think that opened up a conversation to our actors and performers, if you will, about let's talk about even our seasons, right? What are you thinking? So maybe, because we always think that, the companies are going to protect us, right? They're not going to give 25 different versions of Mamma Mia out. They're not going to give all these different, because that's the whole point, right? Not to have every theater doing it. But we realize that that's not kind of working. So maybe even just, hey, we're thinking about these shows because it'll allow me to think maybe I can add diversity. How can I piggyback off of their programming? I think their season is great, but if they're doing all musicals, maybe I can do a lot more plays this year, especially if I'm with, a kind of within a closer proximity. So I absolutely love that idea about being able to communicate more. I love the whole idea about being able to share lots of resources, whether it's actors and performers, or if it's set, costumes, pieces, all the things that kind of cost us money, right? I just think these are just such amazing ideas. Thank you.
I want to be mindful, Leigh, of the fact that we're doing the same thing we did last time. And we're still on the first question, and we've gone so past our time. So I'm just going to say it out loud.
I appreciate that. I was thinking I love you all because I always have twice as many and in some cases 3 or 4 times as many questions prepared as I actually need, clearly, because you all have so many great things to say. But yes, I also want to be mindful of all of your time because I don't want to keep you past our hour, because I know you all have commitments and lives and families, and I want to get you back to them. So let me.
I feel like we segued into the second question.
We did segue into the second question, so we sort of covered some of it. I don't know if anyone wants to add to it quickly, but I was going to move on to the third question. The second question that I was going to ask, and Karen in particular, you said something about this already, was about what we as theater artists and theater companies can be doing to help the larger community, and if we've learned anything. If that has changed over the past year, if we've learned anything about our role in community and society over the past year. And I think, Karen, you really touched on that already. I do want to, if anyone else wants to add something, you can quickly, but I also want to give you a minute at the end here to plug what's happening at your own theater companies and tell people watching what they can do to support, maybe not just to support our theater companies, but to support theater as a whole.
Yeah, I would love to pitch a little something in there about what we've learned about the last year of like the role of our organization in the community and supporting it, which I think kind of piggybacks on what Lisa was saying about like the art we do should be funded. And I think now is an opportunity to showcase the value of the artistic skills and the art we do beyond the seasons of plays we put on. And, Red Ladder is sort of a shining beacon example of the potential of the gift that artistic participation can give folks. And I think that one of the ways that we grow the pie is with engaging with our communities and going like, how can we serve you by helping you better tell your stories? Or how can we reach out to the performing artistic community with the resources we have as theater companies, with spaces or some, streaming infrastructure that we've put into place and things like that, and say, look, you might not be an actor, a playwright, but you are a performing artist who has been sort of displaced out of these physical performing opportunities. And how do we make space for that? And like, that's part of the reason we haven't announced a season at the Dragon yet, because something that we've determined is that we don't need to dictate the programming, and instead that there's some opportunities, again, kind of to piggyback on everything that we've been saying, like we can not compete and instead program based on how we can amplify and support other efforts that are happening in the area, and support the ecosystem with the little bits of strengths we have, partnering with others to sort of make up for our vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And I think that's a huge thing too, that someone said earlier, is like transparency and vulnerability in moving forward into this reset, so that we can be open with our colleagues about, like, I'm not so good at this, but I can contribute here, and understanding that amongst each other. I feel like the effort that City Lights led with the Giving Tuesday very much felt like that, where everyone sort of pitched in what they could. We all had our own strengths and things that worked from what each company gave. And then we split the revenues, and no one had, these feelings of, oh, well, this person didn't pull their weight or whatever, which is so much of a old times mentality, I feel like, that we can just sort of hopefully forget about going forward.
Yeah, and I just want to say we're going to do that next year too. So we're going to start earlier, and we're going to reach out to more organizations, and December 1st, we're going to do it again. Because the message behind that kind of collaboration and sharing and generosity and transparency, I think is so, so important. And the only other thing that I'd like to say is that, make no mistake, our humanity, our community, our people are traumatized right now. There's been so much pain and so much hurt that has happened in the last year that we don't even know. That we don't normally come into contact with. I mean, not to be personal, but I had no idea that I was going to have such a challenge with, my kids going to school in the next room, and one that should be launching to college. And now, because she's been going to school in her room, doesn't give a shit. Like, doesn't want to go to college now, because the whole experience of education has been completely changed. So sorry to get too personal, but we all have experienced pain, either not seeing people, losing people, being separated from people that we love, loneliness. And I cannot stop thinking about, when it is safe, because that is the most important thing, that the theater, that we are going to provide a place for people to be inspired, to see themselves, to experience and be able to process some of what has happened to the world. And I mean, I'm just like, oh, I hope all those playwrights that I love so much are writing content about this experience right now, because I just want to produce it all, because we're going to need that. We're going to need the arts to help us heal and change and launch us into our next steps. So that I think is another way that we have to help the community, is that the community is has been really hurt.
I think to jump from that also, I think that we should do the extra work as organizations to, I mean, do what Red Ladder's doing, right? Which is like be extremely mindful with every single bit of programming you're doing on how you're helping the community. I think the past year, I shouldn't, this might sound very aggressive, but I like 99% mean it. We've been getting a lot of us have been getting by on, oh, look, we put whatever diversity means to us. We put diversity on stage, and that is the service. And I think we're at a point where, like, that's not enough, right? Like, just because you did a multicultural casting of a Jane Austen thing, like, what else are you doing? How are you actually still serving the community? Not saying that there's no validity there, not saying that there's nothing to it, but you really have to be intentional and do the thinking of it. Again, citing the We See You White American Theater document, they bring up a really good point. It's like, how are you helping the community that you're telling the story of? It's not just telling the story. Are you going to do a play about the Flint water crisis and not do anything to support the Flint water crisis? Then that seems to be the textbook definition of taking advantage or appropriating crisis, right? So maybe you do the play about that crisis to shore, bring awareness to the problem, but also maybe you make a commitment to donating proceeds and asking and letting your audiences know how they can do the same. Like, how do we do those things and be really intentional about that? Because I think that's how we can really support and really meet our audiences halfway. Because I think there's been a lot of, I'm just going to do this show and you come to my doors if you want to come to my doors. And we have to be frank with ourselves. There's a lot of people who don't feel welcome in our doors, and we have to do a lot of self-reflection on why that is. And there's so many levels of it. Is it the photos that are on our lobby doors? Is it the shows we've done in the past? Is it our front of house and how those interactions go? And what can we do to improve those situations? I can't tell you how many experiences myself or other directors of color, for example, have been in previews of a show and an usher is trying to kick us out because we don't have a ticket to the show. I'm like, of course I don't have a ticket to the show. I was just rehearsing a second ago and I went to go get dinner. You know what I mean? But why are you assuming that I'm not supposed to be in this building, right? So it's something to really, there's so many levels of it that, again, it's not saying that anyone's bad people, but we really have to just unpack so much to really truly help our community in the way that we want to.
Or having artists of color who work in your company and you're doing workshops in a prison and the count is off because they're counting your artists. Because that has happened on multiple occasions. And understanding the trauma that creates for the artists themselves to be in a setting where they are assumed to be someone who is incarcerated in that setting just because of what they look like and how they present. So, I do think we can always be doing more. I think you're exactly right, Jeffrey. It's not enough just to tell the stories, but what is that other connection? City Lights has always been great about having community partners, right? And that proceeds do go to those community partnerships and that they lift up the issues and situations that are going on. Tabard Theater does the same thing, right? That there are community partners that they lift up to be able to say, it's not enough just to tell this story, but how can we make a difference? And to know too that, that sometimes there's work that gets done that is for the community for which the work is done. It's one of the things that I see sometimes where, we'll have funders who will say, oh, it's so exciting that you do this work, in the shelters or in juvenile hall. And can we come and see the play? And sometimes the answer is just no. I mean, you could, but I'm not trying to put on some kind of dog and pony show that is for you to feel good about what you're doing. Please, provide the resources for us to do what we do and for the people who are experiencing their artistry for the first time to know that it is for them and that it's not just that someone gave money for them to do something that makes that other person feel good, but that the program exists for the right reasons, because the art itself is transformative, and that the right thing to do is to be able to have an opportunity for people to transform their lives through the act of being creative.
Well, and I think, Karen, that's just amazing, right? It is for the community in which you're performing for, right? If I'm working within the shelter, if I'm working within the police, the prison system, it is for that specific artist. It is for them. That is for them, not for us to just kind of gawk. But I would also love to kind of shine a light on that initial meeting. I've been in a lot of meetings recently with, I'm not going to say BIPOC because I'm a Black man. So I'm going to own my Black man now. I can be part of that community, but I'm a Black man first. So I've been talking to a lot of, Black men and women about, our first introduction to theaters, right? And the first person we meet is the casting director. I think that those are the people who speak for us first. It's your maitre d'. Right. And I think that is the door that we really, I would love, as us as theaters to get our maitre d's together so that they all have a plan about what it's like. because once again, it is Field of Dreams, right? Just because you build it, that doesn't mean they're going to come, right? Just because you're asking to do a show of color, are you ready for shows of color? Does your lighting designer understand what that's going to look like? Do you have the sizes of the costume that's going to be? So many artists of color, including myself, right? I get there, the costumes don't fit. They don't work for me. They're not built for me, but you asked me to come. Right. It's the experiences that we have. I mean, I myself sent off an email, about a show. I was trying to get my equity weeks. I haven't done it in a million years, but I sent off a show to a casting director about a show that I know I'm perfect for. Didn't even get a response back. Thank you so much. We received that information. We'll go ahead and file it. I think those are the things, right, that give our companies these things that we don't even know about as artistic directors, right? We don't know that they emailed somebody and it just didn't go through. We're not realizing that they're showing up, but we can't really afford the costume. So we're doing the best we can because of the person. So I think that that's a bigger conversation that we need to have, that when we are inviting these people into our houses, is our house ready for them? If I'm going to invite a vegetarian to my house, I got to be able to feed you. Right. So I think that's another big thing we need to look at. It's not just asking them to come and partner. Are we ready for them when they arrive?
100%. And I think something to piggyback on that is like our definitions of excellence and what theater is for artists who are coming from different backgrounds. Coming from a vaguely Middle Eastern background and sort of the conversations that happen around different cultural performances and sort of them being held to different standards, or having, being part of the high art theater conversation versus the cultural performance conversation. And like, these are things that wear away at that trust.
All right. I hate to cut off conversation that is as excellent as this, but we have once again run over the time that I was supposed to be keeping you here, and I apologize. But in the interest of lifting up voices and what all of our other companies are doing, I do want to give you all a second to share any ways you have right now that people watching this could support what you're doing, whether that is you have a show going on that you want to pitch, or whether there are volunteer efforts, advocacy efforts, anything like that. People watching this, what do you want them to know about how they could support theater here now? Karen, you want to start?
Sure. If you go to our website and you go to the Support Us tab, you can see that in addition to, obviously, hit the donate button if you want to, but we also have a wish list of things that we need, and some of them are simple and things that people might have access to. And sometimes we're aware that because not a lot of people get to see the work that we do, that we are often referred to as the best kept secret in San Jose. So I will say, if you go to our Facebook page and follow us or like us, we're going to be rolling out next Friday is the 1 year anniversary of when everything stopped, when we stopped being able to go into the settings that we serve. And we've put together about a 10-minute video that shows what our journey has been over the last year, and we're going to be rolling that out next Friday, 1 week from today. And so tune in and check it out and see what we've been up to for the last year.
Awesome. Thank you. Max, what can people do for what you're doing?
Sure. Just engage. Come visit. The link is down below, dragonproductions.net. We have something going on basically every week, whether that is our audio book club, where we work with voice actors and read books and have a book club so that you don't have to take the time to read the books yourself, or come check out one of our Live at the Dragon shows and see all kinds of performance, engage with our education projects. And next week or the week after, we soon have a production that we'll be announcing that's going to be in partnership with a bunch of local folks that I'm very excited to partner with for an online crazy video game meets theater meets immersive experiences kind of thing. So keep an eye out.
Fabulous. Gary?
LosAltosStage.org. It's our last weekend for Tom Paine. Go see Tom Paine. I'm going to prepare your souls for it. It's like watching Fargo. It's like watching Fargo. Prepare your soul. It's a great, great show. When we call it a comedy, Fargo.
Awesome. Thank you. Jeffrey, what can people do for you?
Well, at TheatreWorks, we're really just we're really just prepping for what's coming up. So I'm going to encourage everyone to see what our colleagues are talking about on the stream. And I also want to take this time to just signal boost. There has been an awful amount of hate crimes against the Asian American community, especially since the beginning of the pandemic. There was a lot of hate speech and connection to the Asian American community bringing the coronavirus here, and some people have latched onto that. And especially in the Bay Area, especially in February, as we were leading into Lunar New Year, there was a lot of attacks on the elderly Asian American community. So I would encourage people to go to stopaapihate.org as a resource to be able to report any crimes that they are witness to. And also there is wearenotavirus.org to see any resources or donations you can make to support the Asian American Pacific Islander community during this really challenging time.
Did I get it right? wearenotavirus.org. Perfect. Okay. Lisa.
Thank you for that, Jeffrey. That is super important. That's another example of how we cannot be in our own bubbles anymore. Like, what's really important to me is what you just said, and what can we do and the people that love us do to address that. I'm grateful for being invited to this conversation. I'm grateful that Leigh is so on it with the websites. Anything that's going on at City Lights right now, you can find there. So all I really want to say is just support the arts. It doesn't matter, City Lights. I don't care who it is. Just, if you can, as you know, as little or as much as you can, the arts really need you, and you really need them. So musicians, museums, any of us, anyone else, anything in your neighborhood, anything that you care about, just keep supporting the arts. And thank you for making this happen for us, Leigh.
And thank you all for coming and taking time and joining us. I am so grateful to all of you for coming. I am so grateful to all of you who are out there watching right now, because that is also supporting what we are doing, what everyone is doing, what is happening in the world of art. And that is very important. So thank you so much for joining us here on La Hora del Mitote. And we will be back a week from today, next Friday at 7 p.m. Same Facebook page, same YouTube channel. You know how to find us. So until then, everybody stay safe. Everybody be well. And we will hopefully see you all right back here again next week. Good night, everybody. Thank you.